Golden days for Trump as US GDP hits four-year high. Thank you for joining us for another Bank of Cardiff newscast. During his 2016 presidential campaign, President Trump pledged to double the country's moribund economic growth to 4% or better. As the Commerce Department reported results for this year's second quarter of 4.1%, its fastest pace in 4 years, Trump was finally able to deliver on his promise. The exponential growth in GDP, driven partly by the $1.5 trillion of tax cuts that were pushed through earlier in the year, and partly by the rush to export products ahead of Trump's tariff deadline, is expected to provide a major boost to the administration. Trump has already heralded the achievement as amazing, at the same time claiming that the next quarter's figures, due shortly before November's midterms, will be outstanding too. But economists have injected a note of caution, predicting that as quarter two's growth is primarily due to temporary factors, the pace is simply unsustainable and will more likely settle around the 3% mark. Good, but not outstanding. Well, it's a forecast that's unlikely to faze the president, who during a trip to Iowa and Illinois made a prediction of his own. It's only going to get better. And it's hard to argue with his logic, as records show that the U.S. economy hasn't been this buoyant since 2014, when growth reached 5.5% in the third quarter. The latest uptick has been driven by a potent combination of rising consumer spending, exports, and business investment. Consumer spending on big-ticket items accounted for its return to a growth rate of 4%, while business investment registered an impressive 7.3% rate across the quarter, and government spending posted a 2.1% rise, largely sparked by a bonanza in defense and domestic budgets. It's not all good news, though. The exports boom, 9.3%, can be largely attributed to the rushed response by exporters of soybeans and other products to beat the clock before Trump's retaliatory trade tariffs take effect. Tariffs that economists fear could signal an escalating trade war between the United States and China that will damage prospects for future growth. Meanwhile, housing continued its downward trend, shrinking by a rate of a little over 1%, following a 3.4% decline in Q1. The pace of growth may be difficult to maintain. The economy grew just 2.3% in 2017, and GDP growth hasn't risen above the 3% mark over 4 quarters since the early noughties. When taken with Q1 figures, GDP has averaged 3.1% over the first 6 months of the year. There are also fears that this micro-boom has only benefited wealthier Americans, turning measures meant to boost investment and job creation into a dividend for investors, as evidenced by the record levels of stock buybacks, which are set to top $800 billion this year. These concerns that are likely to be strengthened by rumors that Trump is planning a $100 billion tax cut via reform to capital gains legislation. Wage growth has also been surprisingly unresponsive to the economic upturn. Bad news for tax revenues and the U.S. budget deficit, which, according to the Congressional Budget Office, could hit the $1 trillion mark by 2020, a full 2 years earlier than previously predicted. Now, while short-term economic prospects for the U.S. are looking rosy, even the most optimistic of forecasts expect to see growth level off during 2019. Now, this year has been something of an anomaly. The president inherited a rising economy that he was able to boost via a raft of corporate and personal tax cuts. The shadow of trade tariffs is looming large, and next year may see a tightening of belts as consumer prices rise and higher interest rates squeeze spending. For now, Trump should make the most of the good news. It may be that the best is already behind us. Join us later this week for another Bank of Cardiff newscast, and remember that all of our newscasts are available on our website. That's bankofcardiff.com/newscasts.